Hey YouTube, this is Don with the Bare Basics, and today's video we're going to be talking about winter camping tips and tricks to stay warm and dry so you can survive your camping trip. So, grab your reindeer hoodies and let's get started. Alright guys, now all kidding aside, these are going to be 5 tips and tricks on how to survive a winter camping trip, whether it be staying warm, keeping yourself dry, or making sure you have a proper insulation system to make sure you can survive in harsh elements or environments or weather, depending on the situation, obviously. So I'm going to start with my first and my favorite one, the water bottle warmer. So one of the best tricks I probably ever learned in Boy Scouts was when you're on a winter camping trip and you want your sleeping bag to be warm at night for you to help you sleep. Basically what you do is you take a water bottle, whether it be a metal water bottle or a nicer quality bottle like a Nalgene, something that's not too cheap or plasticky, kind of like this. You wouldn't want to use this for what I'm about to tell you. But basically what you do is you take boiling water and you actually put it into your water bottle. Like I said, a steel one. Boiling water with something cheap like this may eventually melt through it, and then you'll have a wet sleeping bag, and nobody wants that, trust me. But basically, you'll put that boiling water in your water bottle here, and basically it'll create a nice little heater. And so sometimes this can get a little too hot, especially in these metal water bottles. So you can always wrap it in a towel as well, or maybe a light shirt or something. But basically, you stuff this in the bottom of your sleeping bag, and it helps keep your feet warm, and it helps insulate, or not insulate, but heat up the whole bag as well, as long as your sleeping bag's well insulated. And, well, this doesn't last for the whole night normally, and it obviously will vary depending on, how big your water bottle is, and where you're sleeping at, and also how bad the weather is outside, depending on how cold it is. But for at least a few solid hours, you've got a very nice sleeping bag heater, which can help you get through the night and be much more comfortable. Now, number 2, kind of on the same premise of, kind of using the heat from your sleeping bag. One of the worst things that can happen to you is in the morning when you're doing a camping trip and you have to try and fish your clothes for the next day out of your pack. A lot of times your pack may be outside or at a certain corner of your tent, and maybe it's not very hot or not very warm in your tent, and next thing you know, you're trying to put on your clothes for the next day and they're freezing cold. They could even be stiff if there's any moisture at all in them, and you're just very uncomfortable for a little while until your body heat heats them up or until you get in front of a camping fire. So another trick I learned in Scouts was to take your clothes for the next day, socks, underwear, pants, shorts, shirts, whatever you're wearing for the next day, and actually put them in the bottom of your sleeping bag as well. Your body heat, if you don't have a water bottle heater, your body heat will actually heat up these clothes. So that way the next morning, you'll have nice, warm, heated clothes that you can put on versus having very cold, stiff clothes for the next day. It just, these little things, these little simple steps and a little bit of preparation for the next day can really help make a trip a lot more, I don't want to say luxurious, but a lot more comfortable. Now, another thing, kind of on the point of staying dry. A lot of times when you're hiking on a winter camping trip, or even on any hiking trip, for example, if it rains, if you're going through mud, a creek, anything like that, even if you have the nicest boots out there that are waterproof, water resistant, whatever, if these shoes or your socks or anything else get wet or moisture accumulates in them somehow, you want to make sure to get rid of that moisture as quick as possible. Otherwise, you're going to have issues on your feet. You're going to have either chafing issues, just discomfort, or cold. And one of the best ways to do this is, let's say you've been hiking all day, you're done for the day and you're at your camping site. You may have a second pair of shoes maybe for just the camping grounds, or maybe sandals or something like that. Obviously, if you're winter camping, you'll probably have something, more along the lines of like a camping tennis shoe or something. However, if you're planning to do more hiking or you just want to be able to wear those boots for the next day, one of the best ways to get rid of that moisture is to take the boot. Let's say we've got one of these guys, for example, and you want to, let's say the inside's got a little bit of moisture in it. Let's say I was walking through a creek or something. You want to take a rag, some sort of microfiber cloth, maybe even extra thin towel you might have lying around. Even, if you have them lying around, paper towels, I wouldn't terribly recommend it, but if it's the only thing you got, it's the only thing you got. And basically what you're going to do is you're going to take your rag and you're going to stuff it into the bottom of your shoe. You want to do your best you can to spread it out as best as possible. You don't want it to get all scrunched up in there. You want it to actually be as flat as possible and to cover as much of the inside sole of your shoe as possible. Now I would say this rag that I'm using here is probably a little too small for this boot. I have a couple of microfiber towels that are about, I don't know, 1.5 feet by 6 inches that I use. And those things are great for shoes because they fit in there very easily. And basically what you'll do is, you'll have the cloth in the shoe overnight. And you want to make sure that your shoe is under a tarp, or perhaps in the tent with you, or in some sort of waterproofed area where you're not going to get dew on it the next day, or perhaps if any overnight showers come over, your boot's not going to get dirt or wet again. But basically, you're going to get the cloth in there, and overnight it'll actually help absorb some of that moisture. Now, I have had some mixed results with like putting some stuff into the boot to help kind of weigh the cloth down a bit so it kind of sponges up some of the moisture. I've kind of hit or miss with that one. Sometimes it works out great. Other times I really haven't noticed a difference myself. I think it kind of depends on how wet your shoe really was from the day prior. But just a little thing like that can help make the difference between your boot being soaked the next day and maybe just having a little bit of moisture that eventually will wear off during or throughout the day. Now, I know I've talked about this in prior videos as well, but number 4, having an extra tarp. I talked about this, and I think in all of my camping level series of videos, having an extra tarp. I honestly, not only because a lot of times your camping troop or the people you're going with might forget a tarp. I usually have anywhere between in my long-term camping pack. I have anywhere between 3 to 5 tarps of varying thicknesses and sizes. Now, granted, some of that is because in case someone forgets one, sure. But honestly, the main reason is so that way, because those things have so many extra utility purposes, especially on a camping trip, and especially in winter weather. Whether you need an extra layer of insulation between yourself, your sleeping bag, and the ground below you. Whether you need to make sure that you have an additional rain tarp over your tent, so that way, water's being drained away from your campsite and not back in or into your tent floor. And if you have a wood supply, and you're afraid of any sort of overnight showers coming over, having the ability to cover that wood pile, or perhaps make a small makeshift platform that can steer water away from that, can really make a big difference in being able to keep a sustainable fire going or a good heat source and light source. So I don't think I really need to explain too much more with that. Obviously, the utility really does speak for itself, especially on a winter camping trip. You got heat, you've got protection from moisture, and obviously keeping your fuel dry. Now, finally, the 5th part, and this is going to be the biggest one, so I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this, having a layer system. And what I mean by that is when you're going on a winter camping trip, pay attention to the weather. Figure out, is it going to be raining a lot? Is it going to be dry? Is it going to be humid? Is it going to be snowing, raining, sleet? What kind of altitudes and weather are you going to be dealing with? And once you find out what you're going to be dealing with, come up with a system of layered clothing to help you be as comfortable, as dry as possible. Now, granted, if you have the money and you have the ability to get some nice clothes, nice camping clothes, they do make coats out there now, for example, that are waterproof, cover like 2/3 of your body, are still breathable at the same time, come apart. They have glove inserts, hoods with masks. They can zip up over them so you can be properly insulated. That's great, and maybe that is a great system for you. Maybe that's, you just want a one-stop shop, one thing fits all, does all. That's great. But the problems I have with that are kind of 2 things. First of all, those coats are expensive. They are very pricey. You can't find them just anywhere. You usually either have to order them or find them at a specialty store. And because of that, for me anyway, not that I don't like investing in quality for a camping trip, but you almost know they're going to get ruined on a camping trip, so it's really hard to commit the money for it. I'll say that right away. And then the other thing, number 2 on that, the other thing I don't like about those kinds of coats is if for some reason you do get too warm, you really do want to make sure you don't sweat too much on a winter camping trip. You can cause a lot of illnesses. It can cause possibly hypothermia even in some extreme situations if you don't know what you're doing. So because of that, if you just have that one coat and then a t-shirt underneath, if you take off that coat because you simply can't handle the heat from it anymore, your protection now is a t-shirt or maybe a long sleeve shirt, and maybe because of the area you're in, that's not enough to keep you warm. So next thing you know, in a few minutes, you're cold again, you're freezing, so you gotta get that coat back on. But then you're too hot again, and you're constantly in in a phase of discomfort because you're going from too hot to too cold. Now, again, part of that can be kind of accommodated for if you're prepping correctly. You know, if you know that the weather's going to be kind of fluctuating and you know that that coat's going to get too hot eventually, so you put on maybe like a thin fleece under it, or perhaps even though I don't recommend it all the time, well, rarely ever, a cotton sweatshirt under it that provides a good amount of warmth, maybe even some sort of nylon sweatsuit. Sure, those are always good ideas for you. However, I'm going to kind of talk about my system that I use, and I really do kind of tell everyone and try and convince them to do, because I think it's a great system. It's very simple. It's a 3-layer system. The first layer is basically some sort of athletic shirt. You don't want to do cotton because this is going to be your base layer. This is going to be something that's going to accumulate all the sweat and moisture from your body. You want it to be something breathable so that way that moisture doesn't stick down in there. But you want it to, you know, give some sort of protection from the weather as well. I'm not saying it has to be waterproof, but you know, you don't want the moisture, if this is your only layer on for a little bit, you don't want a flash rain to come in, hit you with some moisture, and then it soak in there. So that is the first layer. And again, nylon, polyester, a lot of athletic wear clothes, because they're a little bit of because water runs off them pretty well, and also because they do dry quickly, it can be a very good thing to have. Now, layer 2, I call this a comfort layer. Now, I know I just said I never recommend cotton, but this is one layer where I think I'm not going to say I'm going to make an exception, because there's definitely other materials out there that I would say are better for this layer. However, if you're just looking for comfort and you know you don't have a lot of money in your pocket, having some sort of sweatshirt. This one is kind of nicer. It's 60% cotton and 40% nylon. Nylon is a pretty good. It dries pretty quickly. Of course, however, the cotton kind of negates that. But basically, your second layer, it's a comfort layer. This layer is basically just something that feels good. It's comfortable to wear. It's comfortable to have a lot of weight on, for example, if you're carrying a pack. However, it also provides a lot of heat for you. You do have to be careful. This layer, like I said, I have for this sweatshirt, it's a cotton nylon blend. Obviously, fleece would be the most preferable layer for this, or material for this layer, because of the fact that it's very good at insulating you, and it is pretty water resistant as well. Well, it dries quickly anyway. So basically, the main point of this layer is to add a little bit of luxury. You know, you don't have a lot of room for creature comforts on a winter camping trip, so the comfort layer allows you to have a little bit of some softness in your life when you're doing a hiking trip with a lot of material or packs. It provides its basic purpose is to provide comfort and warmth, and that's pretty much about it. You're not hitting the elements really hard with this layer. It's just for, if you're dealing with a lot of cold temperatures. And finally, the third layer. This layer is going to be a waterproofing layer and a windbreaker. At least water resistant, if nothing else. Like, for example, this jacket, this was very cheap. It was from a department store my father got me for Christmas. I've had this thing on countless campouts. It's not waterproof, but it is quite water resistant. It can take a lot of water and rain before it really starts seeping through the material. It's very thin. You can't really see it too well here, but this is just a very thin, kind of just standard jacket, to be honest. It does have a hood. It has a pretty high collar to help break the wind. And I'll see if this might be the one where the hood's kind of, oh no, okay. It's got a nice hood that does have drawstrings on it to help, keep me warm, keep me more insulated. And it does also have pockets as well, so I can keep my hands dry and warm as well. Obviously, I could have gloves on also. But it is also breathable. It has these bottom flaps here, which allow for a bit of venting as well. Your third layer is going to be that very harsh element weather. It's not really providing a lot of warmth. It's not really providing a lot of insulation. It's just keeping your other layers and yourself dry. Now, obviously, you do want to be a little bit careful. Like I mentioned before, this is a cheaper brand. It's just got a standard jacket with a hood. There are some nicer coats out there that have, glove extensions that are built into the sleeve that are also waterproof. The hood has a zip-up mask that can help keep you more insulated and dry as well. I kind of leave that up to your discretion on how far you want to go with that. The only problem with those I see is that it's a little bit harder to take it all off. Kind of the next thing I'm going to talk about is why I like the 3-layered system so much. And that is because of its versatility of use and its convenience in removal or putting back on. So for example, let's say I'm wearing the 3 layers on. I've got my waterproof coat, my sweatshirt, and then my athletic shirt. I mean, I'm pretty warm right now. Obviously, I'm inside a house, but you know, I could start sweating if I wasn't careful or moving around too much. However, let's say I'm on a camping trip and I have these 3 layers on right now and it's raining. I'll keep this on because I do want this waterproof layer on. Because it's raining, because there's probably some sort of wind buildup or you know, cold for a winter camping trip, obviously. You know, I would probably keep this on the entire time. However, let's say it stopped raining. Let's say now I'm starting to get a little warm and I want to take off a little bit of insulation. The best part about this is, you know, with a little bit of coordination, it's not too hard to take this off. Like I said, it's very thin, very light. Even if I was wearing a backpack, I've had times where I just take off one strap and then take off that side, put that strap back on, and then just repeat over here and take that off. And boom, I can wrap this around my waist. I can throw it onto my pack. I've done both and then just kept on hiking. That way I'm not stopping, I'm not wasting time, and yet I'm also not trying to, you know, get heat exhaustion from having all those layers on. And then, now I've got my 2 layers here. Now I'll admit, I like having the zipper. I haven't had a sweatshirt with a zipper for a while, so this one would be a little bit harder to take off. But obviously, you know, if you were getting too hot, you definitely would rather, you know, stop, take a minute, take off your layer that's bothering you, and then you're down to the last athletic layer. And in my opinion, that's really where the really big advantage of this 3-layer system lies. It's very simple. You have 3 layers. You have a moisture absorption layer for your athletic base layer, where you're just wearing a shirt that absorbs your moisture. Very breathable, very quick to dry. So that way when you are down to that layer, if it's soaking wet from your sweat, you take it off, you let it sit for an hour in the sun, it's dried, you put it back on and you go. Then you got the comfort layer. This layer is to give you a little bit more heat. It's not going to be taken, you know, if it is cotton, you don't have to worry too much about the moisture because your athletic layer is absorbing all the moisture from your body, and you shouldn't be facing any sort of elemental moisture because you would have your waterproof layer on otherwise. So that's just for comfort and heat. And then finally, if it is that harsh environment, you've got your waterproof layer. That's not providing any extra heat. That's what your comfort layer is doing for you. And it's not providing any moisture protection from your body. That's what your athletic layer is doing. Each layer has a job. Each layer has a purpose. The waterproofing 3rd layer is just for those harsh conditions, or just for a little bit of an extra insulation if you are in a cold area with a little bit of snow or moisture that you don't want to get on your comfort layer. And then, like I said, you can always scale back down if you find yourself too warm or too much sweat going on or too much moisture. And like I said from my demonstration before, you can always scale back on your layers if you're too warm or too worried about heat exhaustion or sweating too much through your first layer. But at last, that is my 5 tips for winter camping to help keep you warm and dry. If you guys like the content, feel free to comment and like the video. Also subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Thank you.